The Social Network episode live from South by Southwest with permission of Drew and Lewis. It's their core conversation on just how being social can be so unsocial.
Yo, dude, you just broke up with this girl, whatever, and then it's not a conversation, right? It's me taking little pieces and then putting them all over the place. I follow you on Twitter. I don't see a quarter of the things that you say. And the only real conversations that we have is when we're in person or when we're on the phone. How many people in here still make phone calls? Like seriously, still make phone calls. How many people use...
How many people check their voicemail?
I don't ever check it.
Never.
How many people use their phones purely for business?
Definitely not good for business.
I only do because my customers do. But that's
So I would say that, so we're talking about Facebook and Twitter. Yeah, Twitter, very much broadcast, but it's fragmented. You don't see everything. And I think the same goes for Facebook. And Facebook's trying to do, create features, and they're building their newsfeed concept where you can just watch all this stuff come in. But you're kind of, it's like, putting your toe in the water to see if it's, what, you're like, oh, I'm not interested in that, so I'll let it go by. And that's, it's like, I don't sit on Lewis's wall and watch everything Lewis is doing.
That's a good thing.
Can I push back on Twitter just being broadcast? I think there's whole communities that do just fine communicating on Twitter.
Sure.
Open government is one. If you're in the DC area and you're doing Gov 2.0, Twitter is where the conversation takes place more than anywhere else. That's where you find people, that's where you connect. When events are going on, you're going to find out about them. You're going to go through. It works very well in a professional sense for that. I think, I don't really use it personally, so I can't comment on that, but from a topic area standpoint, I think it's terrific. I think it's wonderful for following the conversations.
I agree. And so Twitter really screwed the pooch and did something that I didn't like, and it did it because the technical limitation is when I reply to Lewis Gray, and my tweet is found at Lewis Gray and responds, if you follow me, but you don't follow Lewis, you won't see my response to Lewis. That was the most social part of Twitter. That's why we all have a bunch of followers. Like the people that were on it early, that's why we have a bunch of followers. Not because we're famous, not because we know people, because he would say something to me, and someone who trusts Lewis would listen in on a conversation like you would in a room. If you like what these guys are saying, you go, oh, that's interesting, you pay attention to them. And because of the technical limitation, Twitter kind of killed that off. And I thought that was their most social feature. Now Twitter's trying to do other things like people you might be interested in and things like that. And Facebook does similar things, but still it doesn't, suggesting people based off of what.
yeah, you don't have the context.
You don't have the context at all. And that's, so it's, sure, maybe at a bar, and you see a pretty face, you're more likely to go up to that person. Someone that's like Lewis, you're running away.
Right.
But I can't make a decision based off someone's username and avatar.
But I think if you look at those two things, you talk about Facebook, people you might know, or people you might follow, you got to look at the objectives of those networks are not necessarily the objectives of the users.
Right.
The objective of networks are to get you connected to more people, so you're connected to more things, and you're on there all the time. It's all about number of page views. You can see the advertisements, which are complete crap at this point.
Right.
And to be able to essentially spend all your time in that space as opposed to somewhere else.
Right.
The whole metric you get every month. How many minutes a month did each person spend there, and are they beating Google by this percentage in this metric? But it's not about who's getting real value out of it, and are they connecting people?
Right. Right. And those connections are purely to, let's be serious, to push and promote content. The like button is a way to push content. When I like something, it comes up on my wall. It's very viral, and it's not how real things work. But I liken Facebook more to like the phone book, like a digital phone book. Like if I find people, if I'm looking for somebody specifically, they all work at the same company, I can find this book. But a lot of conversation doesn't happen on Facebook.
So where's the conversation having for you guys?
Yeah.
Is it on these networks, or is it somewhere else? Are there networks that we don't know about where you're getting real value?
I think there's a number of places. There's forums and chat rooms and things like that. But at the same time, I do see quite a lot of conversations happening on Facebook in comment streams or responses attached to specific comments. I see really long streams of back and forth conversation about specific comments. So I think it varies from person to person, probably from age group to age group. But I do think there's conversations there.
Right. and a lot of the social things that were done with Twitter and the social, conversation that are done with Facebook, but basically user hacks, right? I mean, I can say that sure, Twitter's social. I mean, I did put it on the internet, and it became a social talking point, but it was a talking point, and that's what, posts on Facebook are, is conversation. Once people start trying to have a conversation, it's not threaded. I can't really reply to exactly one person to, yeah, good point, Lewis. I can like your comment, but again, it's not, where do those go? So does anybody else have a place that they go to kind of say, I really like this person and what they're doing, and now I want to talk to them? What do you do? Friend feed was a service with
A Facebook product.
now a Facebook product, which you're seeing being integrated into Facebook now.
Right, a lot of the features are that.
Right. And that, so if Facebook is getting more,
Like,
What's interesting about Facebook, you notice they changed their share feature to like. So the Japanese earthquake, people like myself are like, wait, I don't want to like that content. I want to share it. But I think it was a horrible move to say like for all content that was associated by Facebook. I
last
like
night,
the feature.
2 nights ago, I posted that I was really sad about the earthquake in Japan, and someone liked it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like,
And yet they meant to share it. Seriously, that was the functionality they were after. They wanted to broadcast it to their network because that is a great way to discover stuff. I like reading what you click on, but I don't like the word like.
but all this stuff, the way our brains are wired now,
Yeah.
like this, I share this, that's not social. It's not. Like social is me sitting in front of you, and we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
Someone else walks over, and we're having a conversation. And
We've lost a sense of what social really means.
Are you saying it's antisocial? Is it antisocial?
Do you see? I was just going to say, I think, while that is true in a sense that that it's not really social, to me it's a technology. It's using technology in a way that kind of ties things together, and I think from that new things will come. So even though it's not a social act in and of itself, it's a way to tie things together, and I think that's the benefit of technology, is that you're introducing new things, and the communities will start to show new things will surface from that activity.
There's a term called, that Sullivan calls mass personal, that they're using, in mass personal for Facebook and Twitter and social media campaigns. If you look at these things from a mass communication perspective, they're much more immediate. There's much more presence than used to. So the mass comm scholars, people working mass comm say, this is great. But if you look at it from an interpersonal perspective, then you're right. Then it's not the same as sitting down and having a conversation. It's a much different dynamic. So it depends on which way you're coming at the question of if it's more immediate or less immediate. How do you do that? And it's kind of a new thing. It's personal communication.
I actually disagree that it's not conversations, because I would say that's where 80% of my conversations start. But then when they become too personal, they get taken offline to either a Facebook message, Facebook chat, or mostly text messaging. Like my best friend, we're both use technology a lot. We'll start out on Facebook, catch ourselves, start texting, Twitter each other. I mean, we use all 5 in a different way, but it's depending on what information we're sharing. But it's all, I look at it as all being social. It's just, it's a conversation.
But just to expand on that, it's layers. Twitter is the layer to get to the social piece. Like, you're not being social on Twitter. You're setting up what would become social at a different layer. And that's what, there's nothing. What's that?
When you look at it, they talk about being a real-time news platform. They kind of walk away. If you call them that, they'll say you're wrong.
But I think the layers that you talk about, that's a great point. But those are the layers that people in this room, people like us, have set up for that. You try to show my mom, you lay okay, mom, it starts with this, and then you go here, and you take it off of here, and you do that thing. Like what? Teenagers? Text it. Straight up. Boom. It's like, if it's not in my pocket, I don't want anything to do with it.
But that said, I wouldn't have predicted 2 years ago that my mom and dad would both be on Facebook.
Yeah.
And would be sharing content, but it's happening,
Even
And, you know,
Use dating.
I like your music. There you go.
So you learn something about yourself.
I love it. And then, you know, I also know you have the sneakers, so I know more about it.
That's my social.
Wait, that's social.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, I mean, yeah, you might think you're getting an idea of who they are, but I'm really sure that's exactly who they are. They're just their best people.
That's
That's
a
their
public
thing.
perception.
I took a trip last summer, and actually filming a documentary about technology and how it affects interpersonal relationships. And so the premise of it was, we went 5 weeks around the country without cell phones, internet, and GPS. And I'm 21, so I grew up in that, you know, I'm heavily dependent on the digital age. But that was probably one of the greatest times in my life because it wasn't weighing down on me. And talked to a psychologist about how, like, the constant self-gratification and instant gratification that these networks provide affects your prefrontal cortex and your cognitive functioning. It's really scary because it's actually diminishing the way your brain works while you're surrounded by this consistently. But I think that the important thing to take out of it is that you try to balance yourself to figure out, like, how often you can be on it, what you want to tell people, what you want to believe, and then have time to be out there and talking to people.
Did you change your behavior based on that?
And what you just described is what I see a lot at South by Southwest, myself included. I see someone that I know, and regardless of whether they're talking to someone or not, I will run over, I will interrupt, I will hug them or do something.
Yep.
That's horrible. Like, you know, I mean, it's like, okay. Like, nobody's having a real conversation. And as soon as, like, I mean, Lewis and I were just having lunch, and I'm checking the phone, and he's...
That's because I'm comfortable with you and I'm here.
Yeah.
And this one thing, you talk about social and not being social. So Drew and I get along, we're not exactly the same, you might have noticed. But, you know, people wouldn't pick two people out of the room and say, Drew and Lewis are going to be BFF. The way that happened was through a series of conversations, real conversations, which took place on podcasts, where we talked for probably 4 years, but now we're figured out very similar interests that we have. Drew came down with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. They Hodgkin's break, whatever, go over it now. But, so we have this lymphoma thing, and there's a way to be social about it. There's the, oh, I'm going to retweet that he's had cancer. But instead of that, what I did is I flew to his house without telling him in advance and bought like Red Sox Phillies tickets. We went to do that, spent the entire weekend just the two of us. He could have been busy that weekend. I've been like, hey, I'm going to be in the Sox. But that was on that was on like Tuesday.
Like, hold on, Lewis, I can't go to the Phillies.
And you had like the chemotherapy on Tuesday, so I was by Monday. But so like that is a social thing, and that's not something that you can repeat.
It blew my mind. I didn't really know how to handle it because it had been years, like, since, like, I mean, look, if somebody asked me to go, I would go. Like, I feel like we're always, like, reactive now because of these social networks. We're like, we're waiting. Okay, I'm gonna wait for that piece of content that I can respond to. We're not reaching out. We're not taking that first step. And, I mean, yes, we're really good friends, but that is something that people just don't do anymore.
But don't people do that in real life? I mean, how many people like in
Real life? What's this real life?
So how many people truly, I mean, it's the age-old story at a bar, you're sitting there in a bar and you see a cute girl, how many people actually go up and talk to her? I mean, how many people have the
Oh, what were you up to?
Just Lewis.
I was doing that.
Last night, the same thing, Metro Party was a room full of people, all with their iPhones.
Yeah. I mean, even before all this, you know, to have the wherewithal and have the confidence to go out and be that forward. I mean, we're sitting in a room of 40 people, and I mean, how many of us are really, truly interacting? Or how many of us are waiting on that content to react to it? Like I just did.
That's true, but I've seen a lot of people raise hands too, so that's really good. Yeah, it's the type of person that you are. And I think some of these tools might have been created to break the ice. That is, so text messaging, which, I mean, so I was branded a textpert, which is hilarious. It's kind of weird. But the people texting, especially teenagers, total icebreaker, right? They'll ask each other out on dates. They will ask each other to the prom. They will say, I love you for the first time over text. And, like, and then they'll break up over text. And parents are like, that's so antisocial. It's like, I don't know. using the technology, that's the
It's
question.
just not face to face, and I mean, if you're a teenager, you can't always drive out of the house without all your permissions. That's just true.
So is it the emotion that adds the social piece? Like you said, it's just texting back and forth. There's a non-emotional piece of going back to that, because I can break up with this person. I don't have to interface with them.
Right.
So, but you know, flying to your house and taking you to a game, there's an emotional level that comes into that. Is that the?
Well, it's a combination. I mean, you know, you had a relationship, that formed however it did, and then you guys, built it over time, and then, that was a situation where it obviously made sense for most to do that, and it worked because you guys are such good friends. I think we talk about this all the time in terms of where does social media fit as a communications tool. And no, it doesn't replace the telephone. No, it doesn't replace email. But it's one of those new tools that you can use.
And the reason why it doesn't is because I think, I don't want to get too semantical, but semantics works here. We've made social networking to a noun, but it's not. The noun is network, and the social describes it. Okay? And so ultimately these are networks that happen to be social. And that's what that concept came from. And now we're in this room because it's migrated. We're talking about this because it's become a noun, but it should never have. And it's a tool.
There's a larger context in the real world that this urbanization and where we live now is not community-based in the way that, like if you have relatives in a small town, if you go there, people from my small town in Indiana where all my family is, they'll literally honk at every car that comes by because they know them. You stop by the pizza joint, you're there for 3 hours.
But you don't say a hammer's not social and not community-oriented because it's designed to hammer nails. Meaning this network is designed to create that wave. I sail, and everybody out on the water waves at each other. We don't know each other. It's the most social environment in the world. That there's this gulf of water between us, but we're all like, right? And like, and no.
But you don't have relationships with them.
No, but the point is that I don't think this was ever designed to be a relationship.
I agree.
It's a social
You're right.
network.
I think what you said over there about layers, exactly right. Like I ran a college marketing program years ago, and that used Facebook before it was outside of college, and really it was a tool to meet kids in your dorm or your class before you got there, so that you could go up to them and go, hey, meet me at, and then you developed a real life social relationship with them. I think what we've adopted today is this thing that we call a social network, and we feel like it's supposed to be social, and it's really escalated. And I'm interested in what you guys think, because as a trend watcher, you see trends go to the high point, and I think I started to feel like we hit that with Twitter and Facebook a little bit as your content becomes edited personally, because there's not, there's too many people on there that you don't know. Like even me, I have kind of a weird sense of humor, and I'll be like, God, my circle of friends would really get this joke, but I might offend some other people, so I'm not going to say it. So the whole fun for me of Twitter became really blasé. So I'm interested, have we hit that peak? And where does it go next, especially for people of your generation?
Right. And that's where I'm going to with where it may have gone, it may be going too far. We're friends on Facebook with people we don't know. Signal to noise is something you hear about, noise ratio. And, we're muddying up on Twitter in its early days, and I followed 50 people. I could walk into a room and see them and it was great social-wise because I didn't have to ask them any questions. I was like, I know what you're up to. You know what I've been up to. Isn't that great? Now we can chill out.
Drew, just to add to that point, I only am friends on Facebook with people I work with or I know or I hang out with. And that number has probably stayed the same for the last year because the Facebook is always on a network. And when they suggest friends to me, they just won't acknowledge that there are people I don't like or there are people I don't know. And I have no way of getting through those 3,000 obscure friends of their networks in order to actually find the people I might be interested in reconnecting with, and so I just don't know anymore.
Right.
Well, I was going to say, you kind of limited it back when I was sitting back here listening to Paul, is that you just eliminated the whole factor of having to talk to somebody by using the tool, and instead of calling it a social network, is what we were pondering, is calling it a communication site is what it is, because you've eliminated the fact you need to talk to somebody, because you said it. When I walk in the room, I know everything you've done, because that's what the social part
When it was manageable.
Well, and before we never had this layer, right? So when you had to go to family or friends, you catch up for 2 hours over a drink to catch up. Now, I know what Lewis has been doing for the past 2 months over work and stuff because he's published it, but I didn't have to talk to him individually. He's made a communication tool into a social extract.
Yeah, but has it eroded? The question is,
Right.
has it eroded our social foundation, or has it, or is it just the same? Right?
Lots more
since
use connections.
It's about balance. It's what she just said earlier. Sure, if that's all we do is interact, through blogs or social networks or whatever. If that's all we do, then sure, we're missing out on a huge social component.
Well, there was a book that's called Bowling Alone, which talked about the breakdown of that neighborhood social community where it used to have a bowling night with all your pals would go, and now people go and they bowl alone. And maybe that's because a lot of us are staying home watching American Idol. Maybe it's because we're staying home in front of our laptops. But there is that kind of element of the social network belongs in here and not outside here. I want to go back to a comment that was made on this side of the room a bit ago about filtering what you're saying because the network that you're impacting online is very different than the people who are inside this type of room or your best friend. So my mother's on Facebook, and I've almost hidden her several times. And it's not because she's a bad person or says stuff that's crazy, it's just so innate, right? Is sure cloudy outside today? I'm like, yeah. And so I talked to her and said, what's your deal? What makes you post what you do on Facebook? Because all I ever do is I read her stuff to my wife and we laugh about it. Is this being recorded, Chris?
Yes.
Good. So I went and asked her about this and said, what makes you post what you post? And she said, actually, when I go jogging in the morning, I think about what I'm going to update my Facebook status with. I was like, are you kidding me? Are you really thinking about that hard? But she really wants to make sure it's the best status update that's going to express how she feels. And I talked to her about it. She said, well, my boss, who she's connected to, my boss likes my optimistic, positive attitude. That's on Facebook. So it drives me crazy. My mom and I get along great. I don't like her Facebook. And I think you all kind of run it.
Let me turn it around.
That's interesting.
When my son went off to college, I could get him to text me. And he would tell me things he would never say to me face to face. Never.
Interesting. He's
Now,
comfortable there.
Yes, because that barriers that. Now, you also have to understand personality types on a person. So, one of the things you also have to see, people with very low acceptance, shyness. I've had several situations here recently. I network, real networking, face to face a lot. And I've had situations where people they won't talk to you. But then you'll get them on Twitter, and you'll build a relationship. And then they're your best friends.
Yeah, I was gonna
So that goes back to what I said before, that they've, by having that separation, there's not that emotional piece where they don't have to feel rejection about what they say or anything like that, so they can say what they want.
Right.
And to your point about what your mom's saying about the clouds, it goes back to what you said earlier, is she's not saying that because she wants to say it. She's saying that for the emotional response, like she wants people to like it. Because somebody likes it, so she's going to think about that because she wants that, someone to like that. Gratification factor, yeah.
Well, here's another thing too that's interesting. My husband's not social, so he doesn't like, he doesn't like that element. But once you get to know him, it's awesome. But if it's that initial emotional thing, it just really blossoms. And he barely got out of me. But as he's watched me and he goes, so this is really interesting because you know people you haven't met. But you're going every night at South by here, I've been telling you all these people. This is really amazing. And what's most amazing is over the years I've gotten to know Glenn and Drew and Lewis, and the minute I see them for the first time, I'm empowered with new information that I've learned and developed relationships in life. So rather than being awkward, we immediately start the conversation. And we have all this stuff to talk about. That is unique.
So that's kind of the foundation, but that kind of is like an empowerment thing, but it's not something that's okay. So I look at Glenn, so Glenn gives good online. Right? He gives great. So you're going to have some people maybe you should follow Glenn everywhere. So you might find people who are especially buoyant online, who are very funny. And I think Dave Weiner actually wrote an article on Crypto.com saying how funny you were.
Oh, that was fun.
That was fun. So people might behave in a certain way online that's different than online because they're more comfortable. And they might drive up a social following which might not translate into a real life social network, where maybe you're more reserved.
No, but that's a good point, because that was one of the things, this may be a awful confession, but if it weren't for online, I'd have very few friends. There's not any opportunities for me to make friends in the real. On the other hand, within my family, I now know more about my nieces and nephews, since we're all on Facebook, than I ever did in the 2 decades prior to that. And it's brought us much, much closer together. I have a niece who lives here in town. We've been chatting. She was telling me that Katz's Deli closed the other day. So my wife and I decided to go out there for a late night snack, and we're sharing things that a few years ago it never would have happened. We didn't have that kind of relationship, and the foundation of it came through Facebook. It's built because we're family, and it'll be strengthened in the real world, but the Facebook is where the knowledge comes from. It has replaced postal mail.
Yeah.
That's the technology replacement there. 10, 20 years ago, my mom would have written me a letter saying, "Oh, your brother did this, and his daughter did here," and now that's all coming out directly from them on Facebook, and it's not being filtered.
Which is one of the reasons why the fastest growing segment on Facebook is grandparents.
Yeah.
Because the way, it's, as I listen to you talk about this younger generation that is growing up on Facebook and sharing, particularly with family, that's the first group of friends, they're pulling us along. Because if we want to stay keeping up with them, they don't call, they don't write letters. Like I have 2 nieces, and it's the same thing. I want to know what's going on. I have one that's traveling in Thailand right now, and she has a blog. And so it's great because I can follow her, but if I'm not following her on blog or Facebook, she doesn't reach out to me in any other way. So I think it's, when we talk about where it's going to go, I think it's interesting to see how this new crop of kids growing up with, it's in my pocket or I don't touch it, or connecting through Facebook with family, how they're going to pull the rest of us along. And we might just have to adapt.
Right, and that's what I think what we're seeing very early on is what is great on Twitter.
That's great. I got all of these guys in here and see exactly what they're saying about you.
I think there's also like a really interesting cultural dynamic happening because like this last year I went to Chile and Argentina and Mexico in the fall and met people for the first time, and a lot of young people in particular. And since I've come back via Facebook with chat and things like that in Facebook, I have this relationship with these people because the cultural and social boundaries have been taken completely away. We have, the language barrier is not as bad because we're both using translation tools, and we're also trying to find ways that we connect, on a personal level but you don't have that like frustration level of having to do it instantly.
And what you're talking about, I think is, I'm not judging anyone or anything, but that sounds like a healthy, cool way to expand your social circle, to expand your friends. And that's a situation where tools like that work perfectly. And there are people that you know in person and you can't go over to their house and hang out with. But you see, especially when I lived in San Francisco, there's certain people that I consider to be very good friends that I would see once every 3 months. And we would just email or tweet or DM or not talk at all, and it's like, dude, we would just drop everything we were doing and walk down the street. That's the other thing too, is we're all so busy all the time. Whenever you ask anybody here at South by, it's like, how's everything been? Busy. It's like, are we really busy? Or are we making ourselves busy? And are we making ourselves busy by trying to manage all this stuff coming at us, especially admittedly from everyone in here, from more people than we really know or can handle?
I blame Angry Birds. And I was going to tell you, this is probably made kind of like Angry Birds because they all are. But what people are doing is finding time wasters to fill the gaps of when they should be sleeping. So, hey, Mark Krinsky, how close do you live to Drew?
I work very close to Drew.
How many times have we seen each other?
Never. Okay, so that is broken, and that's antisocial behavior.
Yeah, Mark.
But, well,
I'm calling you out right now.
I don't know about that. I have 3 kids. My days are busy, right? So networks give me the chance to expand my circle, which I love. And I'm still only going to have so many intimate relationships. I can only call so many people. I can only have so many intimate relationships, but having that larger network of non-intimate, I love it. It's great for me. I don't see the downside to it.
Well, it's been bad. Our communications have gone up exponentially. The number of communications you have per day, there's studies from 90s on, just exponential growth. So the question is every communication as relevant as it once was? I mean, I think it's shifting again more towards loose communications and connections versus a few core, solid, hard connections that you have a lot. And I agree, there's tons of advantage to loose connections, but I absolutely agree. I'm always busy and have very super close friends I see once every 3 months, and it's really weird. And we get together and we always say, we've got to see each other more often.
Well, it's interesting. I've got a buddy who lives in Tokyo, 4 jobs back. As he's lost his job, we reconnected, and then this morning it was really cool. I get a Facebook entry saying he had to walk 20 kilometers to get home yesterday. He had to stay at a friend's last night because it got down to 3 degrees. And he says, I'm like everybody else, and we're conversing back and forth because there's no way to know what these people are going through. Yeah. And I've had several people reach out going, and to me, it's those.
Some of the comments on instant gratification are coming. I remember in 1978, my brother was at school at Oxford. I went to England for 2.5 weeks. I didn't talk to my parents or hear from them during that time period. And today, my son goes off to college, and I worry if I don't know where he is or what he's doing hour by hour. Because I have that ability to actually know. In other words, the cost of knowing that is nothing. It's going to nothing. So you can check up and see what they're doing, and you don't need to. That's something that's driven us to, your point about the instant gratification and stuff there.
I was going to say, as a daughter who now has a mother who can contact me in 15 different ways, I think it is in a way bad because now, if she emails me and she doesn't hear from me there, then she'll email me somewhere else, and then she'll text me, and then she'll, ask my brother to send me a message on Facebook. And so my interactions with her become very shallow because my response is like, yes, I'm at blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's very fractured.
It's like, it's just, yes, I'm safe. Whereas if we had only the phone and I did talk to her, we probably would have had a real conversation.
So my mom did something today that reminded me and kind of fuels this whole social. So she DM'd me on Twitter. So she said, please say hi to Louis on my friend. Please say hi. Give Louis a hug. I was like, okay, so there she's using it as a tool to get me to do something that's very social. Like she could have tweeted at Louis and said, hi. But
or she could call you on the phone. You should have left you a message.
She got it. No, she knows. She knows. I'm in this boat with all. What's that? Oh, yeah. Right. Do you guys remember that? That was ridiculous. Sorry. She's giving us more.
Well, I just think that kind of what it's coming down to is like what everyone's saying is my language is but I think a lot of it just comes to like cutting out the bullshit. Like, don't weigh yourself down with everything because if you really think about it, if you want to interact with someone, think about how much of our communication is nonverbal and how much that's not being communicated through social networks. Like, say you're being sarcastic to someone, how do they know that? They don't, because they don't see your body language. And like, I mean, I don't know. So.
How many people have ever had a fight with someone or argument over text messaging?
With you?
Like email or yeah, I mean, so they don't get your impression, they don't get your tone. So I got,
they definitely get the tone. When you all cap it, cap all of it.
I have to work very hard on this. And when I
No,
get
we just
sense,
started texting recently. We didn't start using texting until recently. He was asking about me and my wife. Well, texting is pretty new to us. It's something we haven't been doing very long.
My wife and I text all the time. We've had 2 pretty knockdown arguments.
I have to work really hard to know when it's going south to just pick up the phone and go, okay.
Yeah.
And just kind of to save it because it can go.
Truman had that happen once, where it's just because you're going so fast. And I called him once and said, I want to talk about the fact we had last week. And he was like, no. I go, no, we're going to talk about it. Remember this one?
Yes.
You're just minutes left. And there's a major piece we're not talking about, which actually flared up this last summer. If you guys remember the story,
I don't know if you want to talk about that.
I do want to talk
Personal.
about it. So just cover your feelings. So Leo Laporte, a lot of you guys might know him. So he uses Google Buzz quite a bit. It's one of the networks where he pays. And for whatever reason, there was a snag in Google Buzz. It didn't update for him for a couple weeks. And there were people trying to tell him he didn't notice that. And all of a sudden he realized it was broken. He was pissed. Not pissed because Google screwed up, but because nobody told him. And he went on this rant about how social networking is not social. It's all about self-centered behavior. Because the fact that somebody who is so widely followed didn't update, nobody knows. So I wrote a post in response called the social me media.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of what I think is happening with social networking. Like, how many followers do you have on Twitter? Probably most of you already know what the answer is. Pretty close. You know exactly what that is. And I think most of you know that you're guilty. And so then you think, well, how many retweets did I get on my last tweet? How many comments did I get on my last post? How many RSS readers do I have? What we're doing is we're kind of quantifying our self-value with the numbers that we have and the responses that we get for each of these items. Exactly. So part of the issue with my mom is she thinks about what she's going to post on Facebook to get the most comments. And believe me, I see what she gets comments on and who that jerk is who follows her around and makes the first comment each time. And I wonder,
That guy's weird.
He's weird. Like, stop commenting my mom. That is weird.
Well, so she's trying to make her
Okay, I'll stop it.
her friend.
Those are the behaviors that get them the emotional response.
Right, no, but yeah, but when you're in this room, like I'm honestly not speaking to impress anybody. I'm not.
No, that clearly hasn't happened.
And I can't.
Yeah. Oh. And it's working.
Lewis, so Lewis, as it goes back, you were reading before what we wrote last year when I wrote the series on VGS, right? I made it up, virtual gratification syndrome, which we all have as bloggers, podcasters, whatever, is that virtual gratification. And the new tools, I hate now even using the word after this session, social network, but the tools we're using gives us, instead of waiting 3 months to meet with a family member or friend to get information back, we want that virtual instant gratification. We want that response immediately from someone. We expect them to answer a tweet or answer a Facebook message, or we expect them to answer email. My voicemail at work says, do not leave a message here. I do not check it. I don't do anything. My emails, I have set to out of office most of the time anyway. I don't want that to be the tool in the communication. I don't want it to be face-to-face. So it's become...
not just social media. We use microwaves. You know, we expect instant results.
Right.
We did,
VGS.
but I'm curious of it. Something I've been thinking about for a long time, and you just mentioned it, do not leave me a voicemail. I want to ask you, how does it impact listening? Because just observing teens that want to be recognized and acknowledged for what they say, I feel like they are not learning how to listen to people at all. I think that listening, when I was in school, was considered like a really good thing to learn. And if you were a good listener, you were good. And I think now that listening, yeah, I'm Canadian. we don't value listening at all. In fact, if you're not tweeting and you're not posting, you kind of feel guilty. You're like, geez, that's great.
Well, doesn't that go to what Paul was saying, is that when you do it in terms of listening, it's more of an emotional layer. It's a factor. You are paying attention to the person that's distributing the information and giving them, in-person feedback. But what we do now is we blast information and hope people read it.
Right, and when other people are talking, you're thinking about what your next blast is going to say.
Yeah.
Or this has happened to me on dates, so I don't know what that says about me, but they're looking at their phone the whole time when you're not talking. You're like, really? Should I just text you?
It's that commercial.
15-year-olds.
Just from my experience, like talking to younger people about it, like younger than me, who've been immersed in it their entire lives, the addictive quality of having that cell phone in your hand when you're having a conversation with someone, there's like, well, whenever I get a text message, that's, a little dopamine burst in my brain. So
It's like the real life version of MySpace. Remember when you had the top 6?
Yeah.
And you'd be like, okay, I'm going to put my boyfriend, I'm going to put my girlfriend. I'm gonna put my girlfriend at number 1, and I'm gonna put my sister at number 2, and then but me and my sister had a fight, so now she's number 6. Like I would do all these things to mess with this thing, and that was the way I could express myself. So you were like constantly, you were waiting for someone to replace somebody. So it's like that text. It's like, you know, Vaughn, give me a text, so I can stop paying attention to you.
But no, there's new social networking applications which are built to do that again. Like if you look at Path,
Yep.
you can have 50 friends that are your top 50. I was on a
They
panel
limit
yesterday.
50 only.
And he said it's actually not just 50, it's your top 15.
Right.
And it was the 15 who, like, if you were in a hospital, you could call and you could get him come. Now, there's an understanding, like, I bet you if I called Glenn and said, come visit me in the hospital, he'd be there.
Absolutely.
I know Drew would. I don't know about the rest of you guys. Maybe
Skype,
Susan.
over Skype, over
And
Skype.
we would have like a tiering system, you know, eventually it goes up. But there are tools that are being built with inherent limitations to try and force you into that top 50. And if, for example, I've maxed out my 50 on Path, and I want to add you, and I messed up before, I got to drop somebody. And they get a notification that they were dropped.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
You can know it.
I'll just try to turn off the text message.
So,
There's a few things here, but there's a few things they do really well. Anything mobile, mobile's a key. So your contact list on your phone, I don't know about you guys, but the contact list on my phone, even though I have a pretty long contact list, it's really people that are supposed to be there. Like, they're people that I talk to, people that I know in real life. Rarely does someone get on my contact list by mistake and I go, who's that? And it was last night. But usually, to get on that list, and that's why you're seeing a blow up in mobile as being a social device and a social Kickstarter now. It doesn't have to start on the desktop. It doesn't have to start on the web, because it's like, here's this list that I've already blessed, like past 250, or your contact list is your pre-blessed list. Instead of going after, following after picture and doing those things.
What's interesting is almost none of this is technological. I mean, we talk about the design of Twitter and the change, and I agree with your comment about the early change in Twitter, but really what we need is either a better operator's manual or better operators, because fundamentally, the tools it's mainly human
Is it
behavior.
still frying our brains, though?
Yeah, and I was going to go back to your comment about listening. What is this doing? Frankly, we don't know. We don't know how this stuff is really impacting us over the long haul. We know it is going to have an impact. We don't know what
Sure,
it is.
making attention span. Anybody with kids, teenagers, they can't think in more than 5-minute bursts at max. It's usually less than that. But so as a digital immigrant, somebody who didn't grow up with these, I sometimes get so fatigued, I just sort of unplug, and like I don't do phone, whatever.
You don't do anything.
Nothing.
You don't want to interact
I'm
with
in a book.
anyone.
I don't want to see it.
You burn yourself.
No, they don't. And so for our vacations, we go to places where mobile doesn't work.
Actually,
Alaska, Smoky Mountains.
We actually do it once a year. The whole family disconnects. Lewis knows the time, and it should be, because I disappear from the net totally for 1 week a year, every year for the past 10 years. 1 week a year, the only thing I'm allowed is, now I allow myself to be able to stream content because I have Netflix, you have to. But otherwise, no computers, no cell phone. Work hates it, turn off the BlackBerry. Everything's off for a total week, and I make them do the same.
Do you announce, though, that when it's about to happen,
Well, by now, most of my close friends, the circle, know that's going to happen. And actually, every year, the VP walks in and goes, I hate this week, and then leaves my office. But they know it's coming. But yeah, for others, I announce it and say it's going to be dark for the week. And in here, I'm watching people tweeting, blogging, sending out the messages. The same thing, the same gratification, that you need back.
But what you're seeing is almost, you talk about not overload, but people are using multiple devices at the same time.
Yeah.
You've seen on the range, like, you watch TV while you're on the laptop, and you've got your mobile on the side. Like, so I have this interesting phenomenon in our house with my wife, and we kind of got used to watch TV with our laptops. And I'll get kind of pissed because the show I really care about, she's got the laptop out, and she's not even looking. I'm like, Conan just said something funny, you sure that laptop? Right, and I'll like back it up to show her that you should have laughed with their laptop away. So, even in a partner relationship, like, there's a little bit of a social breakdown because laptops and electronics get in the way. And I know I'm a huge
She's not
fan.
hanging out with you at all, really. She's just doing her own thing.
She's being social. She's being social. They're not being social.
It's very big, though. I'm here in body, but I'm really not here in spirit. I'm just doing my own thing.
We were at a movie once, and we were both texting the same person. And I'm like, I'm on a date with my wife, she should stop texting me.
I can't stand people who text at movies. That is the worst thing to do. For me to pay $14 and see this whole screen of little, and they think it's like totally normal. That it makes me never want to go to the movie. Right, yeah, it just insanely brutal.
And you can watch the movie at home.
While you're here in Austin, go to the Alamo Draft House.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
They ban it.
They ban it.
And they tell you they're gonna kick your ass out of the door if you do it.
Cool experience.
And you have a beer in the movie. That's good.
When I was in marketing and video games, there was a MTV coined this phrase, MTV attention span, and like you were saying, they coined it at 15 minutes because they would do these little segments and videos, and now I think it's way less than 5.
But maybe we're training them for the real world, because can you think of any time in your job where you've had a half hour straight where nobody's bothered you with communications?
Yes.
I mean, maybe that's the right training.
It could be, like video games, but what point did they experience burnout? You're saying you have burnout, you're saying they need a break, and I was just looking at kids and they never unplug, and they have this background thing all the time. They're tuned into this, even though they're watching TV, they're playing a video game, they still have, they can't focus on one thing.
What you'll see is it is not as fractured as what we have on social media sites. We're not sharing. They're having like true, honest, good conversations. Now, the content of those conversations may seem empty, but they're having personal conversations, and they're speaking in more than 140 characters. Spell correctly, but maybe phonetic, but they're having conversations about whatever the topic is. So they haven't completely lost it. For me, it was AOL. Like I felt AOL was the place where in that same situation, real life didn't have tons of friends. But, a lot of people in local Philly chat rooms that I ended up being really good personal friends with. We would just sit in the chat room and talk about stuff. Not topic related, not 140 characters, no like buttons, no flashing anything, just in a box talking.
That's the one big problem I see with the technology is that it trivializes and shortens things. I have been on policy in the last 9 months or so where I don't get involved in any serious discussions online because you really can't. There's not the quantity of space available, and if you're using your thumbs, then there's not the time allowed to actually participate actively in a conversation. I recall the days when I was in college, you would sit down and solve the problems of the world for hours on end with people, and you simply can't do that online. The 140 character limitations, of course, was the worst, but all of them have some sort of limit as to what you can write there.
I wonder if beyond just the technical limit too, is with adults, why we're not having such personal conversations, is because we're more aware, and maybe we are, maybe we're not, but we're more aware of the outside audience that might read that conversation. Teenagers are not. And so they're willing to talk about their breakup and their heartaches and all of these things with their friends online because they don't see it as something that anybody else in their friend network is going to see.
I think they're fully aware of when they put it on the web and they know who's watching, they don't care.
I think they
Well,
do.
it seems
But
like
But during the
I
spotlight,
think
you know.
they care.
I think it's more along the lines of they feel like if they don't do that, then they're not going to be cool like everyone else. I think it's a social, like, peer pressure type thing where if I don't do this, if I don't say what I'm doing every day, people can think I'm weird. if I don't.
One of the other factors that's going to change that dynamic is that companies are looking at what people say on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's going to be an entire generation. They're not going to be able to hire anybody. That's.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
we're going to go through this transition.
Well, the hard-
It's happening now. It's happening now. We're just starting to see it. It's going to take a while before these young people who aren't thinking about it right now, before they start to go, hey, maybe I do need to think about what I say for these reasons.
Yeah, but their boss is going to have done too.
So that's exactly right. So this is the type of thing where the playing field is changing. I mean, if you look at the last presidential election, every single major presidential candidate admitted to him with pot. You go back 10 years previous to that, and it would have been a deal killer.
Yeah.
Maybe not 10. But you can see that kind of change, and when the society changes, kind of the platform was accepted changes as well.
I think what's really interesting is that what you're doing is modifying your behavior about it. You're starting to learn how to use this tool. And it's a tool, like you said, like a hammer, the analogy, right? And we're all starting to learn how to best use this tool. You use a hammer to hammer nails, right? You don't use it to fix plumbing.
But you can break glass with it.
Right, so we're trying to figure out how to best optimize this for our lives. And you could do it in a way that's really productive, like getting closer with your nieces and nephews, and you can also do it where you're pumping too much dopamine and you're just doing it for self-gratification and narcissism. And so eventually we're going to figure out equilibrium, I think, and that's going to take time.
You can also
it's
use
going to be
social
different for different
networking.
people.
You can use social networking as a hammer. And what I mean by that is, so I won this flight yesterday from and I hear a woman on the phone, like she doesn't care who's listening, she just goes off. Yeah, we had this huge fight, it's over, boom, boom. Yeah, first thing he did was change his status on Facebook, right? And we're like, everybody in the plane can listen to this amazing fight she just had with her ex. And he changed his status as a hammer to her, like, I am done. And it's also because he put himself on a pedestal. He wants everyone to know that he changed his status. And that's something, because when we talk about social media, we want to be on that pedestal. We want our Facebook wall, our Twitter profile, we want it to be awesome. We want people to look how cool we are. Yeah. Who am I following? I'm friends with Drew. I'm friends with Charlie Sheen, or whatever those amazing people are who are at the top. It was like, you have to drink them.
So I want to leave something. I want to leave somebody with this.
Can I actually add one comment? Doesn't there need to be like a feedback mechanism on social though to tell people when they step out of line, almost an anonymous type?
The douchebag button?
Yes.
Yes.
And
people will try to collect douchebags.
Yeah, yeah. Have to be overly stereotypical. Yeah.
But I want to leave. Okay, so here's the thing that Facebook does, and I don't know if a lot of you know that it does. So somebody sends you a friend request. You have two choices, right? Right? Okay.
Three choices.
You blew it.
Actually, there's three.
Yeah. No. So it used to be yes or no. I don't want to be your friend. Yes, I want to be your friend. Now, you ignore. And you ignore, and that person, until you unignore, they see all of your public stuff. They're following you on Facebook. You pop up in their newsfeed. They are stalking you. They are watching your public stuff.
When you ignore somebody,
yes. And then there's a little link that says see or ignored. I had 50 ignored when I figured this out.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And do you know why Facebook did that?
So they don't know you said no.
Right.
No. So they can create content clicks, likes, views, links, shares, all that shit. So Facebook doesn't give a shit about you. Facebook does not care about you.
You know that
Facebook doesn't want you to make new friends or do new stuff. They want you to share as much stuff as to many people as possible.
Well, Drew, you have to go one other step that you left out is also, this isn't the session for it, but it's also depending how you have your controls set of what that is in that public
What's default?
By default.
Right, right, what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, that's not the session, but you've also got to look at what your controls are.
Think of it like this, it's a giant opt-in marketing database.
That's why I did, but I know I didn't see what I was
You know, they never see it. I've seen comments online, if the service is free, you're the product.
You're the product.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was powerful.
What you were saying a minute ago, a little bit ago about Pat, and what you were saying about that rush, that dopamine rush, and we always have to remember what we were just saying. Facebook, Twitter, all these guys, they're not in it for you, they're in it for them. Sure. And that's the way it should be. Their purpose is not aligned with yours. They're going to make it as much of a game as they can.
Yeah.
So that you are changing your behavior.
Right.
To follow to their purpose.
And sometimes that can be good because it can open up doors for people in other countries that you would never be able to talk to, for your niece and nephew, for family members, all of yes, of course it can be used.
But as long as we're aware of how they're trying to
And you change your privacy settings.
we should be able to respond correctly.
Right. People that you may know. The people that come up in that list are those people you think about on a day-to-day basis. You would not have thought about those people unless their faces and their names were showing you in that bottom on Facebook. You wouldn't be thinking about it. So you're now spending time thinking about those people, those faces, and those names when there's a bunch of faces and names that you're already real friends with, but you're not paying attention to. So as you friend people, you know, you have 2,000 friends like I do. I completely screwed myself on Facebook. I'm paying attention to all those content people I really don't care about and miss content that people I do care about.
Yeah, you know, another aspect of that too is Mark Zuckerberg's view of your profile. You don't have a personal profile and a work profile. It's one profile. And that's why my Facebook situation is a mess because you know, some of them are my friends and family. Some are people that I really know. Some are people that I've connected with at a work level.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a customer, you know, employee kind of relationship.
Well, there's one thing missing from it.
When you do updates, who are you writing for?
Yeah, and
I'm asking you.
Frankly, it's one of those things that, what happened is, I started typing in, because I wasn't using Facebook much initially, and I cheated and syndicated my tweets into Facebook. And what happened is more of my family members started getting on Facebook. Once, that kind of hit critical mass, then there was a backlash from my friends and family saying, all this work stuff sucks. We want to see pictures of the kids. So I really try to do, Facebook for a lot more personal stuff, but I still syndicate all my tweets in. So I'm doing a mix of both, basically.
That's one thing they don't have that I don't like is the fourth button, is that the people that request to be a friend on Facebook, and I just spent the past 2 months, every day I go and delete 10 people, and cleaning it down, but they don't have a button that says, please go see my public page. Yeah. Instead, they don't have that option to say, Willie, we're not a friend, and you want to see my content, I publish it all here. So I built a page as my business side, and I send them a note and say, go here, but I'm going to deny you here, and I've turned it down quite considerably. Now don't worry about what content I post on Facebook.
I think this is why, if you watch technology news, you can't get away from the fact that group texting.
Yes.
And I don't think it's about the technology. I don't think it's somewhat about texting, but it's about communication. There's no frills, and cut out the bullshit. And there's people in my contact list, and I want to talk to them, and I want to talk about stuff that we care about.
Yeah.
And so I think that might be a nice step, in the right direction. But it's making the tools work for you, and can't replace it with a phone call. I'm doing it.
As we all get sick of this content mentality, I think we're gonna long for more.
I was just thinking that we're, as a collective society, we're creating that intimate conversation because we heard broadcast responses and broadcast, And I think that the smaller group conversation tools are going to become more popular. And what he's saying, creating public sites and keeping the personal stuff intimate. So as part of the pendulum going,
video chat.
It's going to come back to we're creating smaller groups.
So we hit the time allotted by South by for us to be social.